and welcome to my video presentation about my PhD project. My name is Neline de Jong and my PhD project is about teachers' job leaving in secondary education. In the Netherlands there has been a teacher shortage in secondary education for the last decades, and this problem has attracted the attention of society, politics and scientists, and several plans have been developed in order to improve the situation. These plans have been focusing on the inflow as well as the outflow area of the problem. Inflow issues have to do with the numbers of teachers that find a job in education after getting their teacher's degree, while outflow issues are related to the teachers that leave that job for different reasons. These plans that have been developed in the past years mostly focus on the macro level, the government overhead level, while the factors that play a role on the meso and micro level, the school and teachers level, are just the factors that can be influenced by schools themselves. This PhD study will deal with the outflow area of the problem, why do teachers leave their job, focusing on the meso and the micro level, studying the psychological factors and working conditions that play a role in teachers' job leaving and their influence on the intention to leave the teacher's job. When it is about job leaving in this study, the focus is on classroom leaving, as a teacher shortage problem mainly arises from the teachers who stop teaching and actually leave the classroom, although they might pick up other educational related tasks inside or outside the school. Job satisfaction and job leaving are related. Job leaving is very often related to job satisfaction by stating that the absence of job satisfaction generates a vulnerability for job leaving, and therefore job satisfaction is a key concept in this study. There are multiple theoretical frameworks from different disciplines that could partly explain the problem of teachers' job leaving, but research into the elements of models that could be brought together to explain this teacher leaving problem in secondary education has been lacking so far, and that is one of the aims of this research. This research project consists of 4 studies dealing with 4 main research questions. The first one is which factors and theoretical frameworks can be distinguished in literature and combined to explain teachers' intention to leave the job in secondary education. The aim of this first study, a literature study, is to select or compile a theoretical framework which has an explanative value for the intention to leave the job in secondary education. The literature study will be carried out to obtain an overview of the most important factors and theoretical frameworks that are of any influence on job leaving of teachers in secondary education. The second study has as a question: to what extent does this theoretical framework have an explanative value for the intention to leave the job in secondary education? On the basis of the framework of study 1, a questionnaire will be designed to measure the explanative value of the theoretical framework for the intention to leave the job in secondary education. This questionnaire will be validated in a quantitative and a qualitative pilot study, and then it will be used in the main quantitative data collection to investigate to what extent the selected or compiled framework does have an explanative value for the intention to leave the teaching job in secondary education. The third study has as a question which underlying factors, processes and thoughts in the process of leaving the teaching job does working with the designed instrument reveal. After the first 2 studies, an instrument will be designed with the most important factors that have been defined in the first studies. This instrument should be used at schools to identify job leaving at an early stage. That's the aim of the instrument. A qualitative study with the designed instrument will be carried out among teachers intending to leave from the quantitative study in year 2 in order to gain more insight in the underlying factors, processes and thoughts of their intention to leave. The fourth study has as a question: how does the intention of leaving the teaching job per individual teacher in secondary education develop during 2 years? In this final year, the development of teachers' intention to leave will be measured by a second quantitative data collection among all the teachers who participated in the first survey in order to gain insight in the process of the development of the intention to leave the job for those teachers. the focus of that last study might change, or the study might be combined with another study after the first 3 years of research. As a result of research findings or recent developments, and alternatives could be related to the usability of the instrument for teachers and schools, the results that can be achieved with the instrument, the value of the instrument in restarting the dialogue about job satisfaction, or the role the instrument can play in the human resource management area. The first study, for the very first study, a first attempt has already been made to select possible significant theoretical frameworks and models which might be usable to compile a theoretical model that is appropriate for the situation of teachers in secondary education. That all start with selecting a model that explains job satisfaction. Job satisfaction can be defined in many different ways, but for this study I've chosen to use the definition of Houdin and Judge, because this definition combines different aspects, and there is a affective aspect, there is a cognitive aspect, and there is a behavioral aspect, and these aspects are reflected in educational related research about job satisfaction. So therefore this definition seems to be the most appropriate one for this current study, because in that way it draws a connection between influencing psychological factors, especially the affective component, working conditions, these are cognitive components, and there is the intention to leave the job, which is a behavioral component. An example of a model that explains job satisfaction is a JDR model of Di Maruti and Bucker. This model has been displayed in more than one way, and selecting the model to use, the first or the second one, is part of the literature study. The JDR model, which is a general model, tries to bridge a gap between the stress research tradition and the motivation research tradition by indicating job demands and job resources as predictors for work engagement or motivation, and in the end organizational outcomes, like job satisfaction is. This model seems to resonate important concepts of the teacher job leaving research area, and for that reason might be worth taking into account, or even used as a starting point to develop a more targeted model for the current study. In order to attain a more targeted model, the relations between this model and educational related research will be defined. For example, Stamet and Scheren did research in education into push and pull factors that could encourage teachers to give up their job, and these push and pull factors can be related to the job demands and job resources in the JDR model. Push factors are factors internal to the organization that incite people to look for another job, and pull factors are factors external to the organization, which can do so. Examples are content of the work, organizational issues, result orientation of the organization, the threat of losing your job, relation with colleagues, the way the direct supervisor does his or her job, work stress, amount of work, autonomy, career perspective. These are all push and pull factors. Another way to achieve a more targeted model for this study is by theoretically justifying the separate components of the JDR model in order to be able to select the most influencing factors for education. For this, the Big Five model of personality might be an option to explain the personal resources meant in the JDR model. The self-determination theory of Gagne and Dacey and Ryan, I should say, could explain the motivation variable, and the organizational outcomes could be related to the theory of planned behavior of Fishbein and Eisen. At this moment, I'm at the beginning of the first study, the literature study, of which all this will have a place in. Of course, I already did some research to write a research proposal, but now the real work is going to start. It feels like that. And I feel a bit nervous about something. And the thing is, there are lots and lots of sources, researches, information, etc., and you can never include everything in your study. And of course, I know that is all about the focus and the keywords that you use to find your sources, but the idea that there is a possibility to overlook sources and to exclude sources too early that might have been valuable, that frightens me a bit at the start. And I'm wondering how to deal with that anxiety in the best way. Do I just have to start, make sure that I keep a good logbook of everything, map and organize all the information, and will things work out as they should work out in that way? Or are there any other strategies to reduce my uncertainty in this? And I have summarized this question on the screen. And I hope that this question will be discussed in smaller groups or in a plenary session during the course. Thank you for your attention. I'm looking forward to meeting you all on the 27th of September. Bye for now.